To successfully transfer from biomedical sciences to medical school, I had to be one of the top students in my cohort. Out of the hundreds that applied, I was one of 8 students that they accepted and the only international student that got in. I scored between 80 to 100% in all of my exams and averaged well above a first class. And the thing is, it wasn't magic. I really don't think I'm that special, but there was a formula. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about exactly how I did it. This is my story. Getting into med school, becoming a doctor is what I wanted for a long time. As soon as I started biomedical sciences, I remember calling up the university to ask about the special transfer program they have to medical school. When I first heard about this, I got really excited because I made some really dumb decisions the first time I applied to med school and didn't get in. So this was redemption. I'd get to transfer straight to med school after only completing 1 year of biomedical sciences. It was a golden, no-brainer opportunity. But when I called them to ask about this, they immediately told me, look, you will not get in. It's extremely competitive. In fact, it's impossible for you to get in. So if you're coming to Manchester for just this reason, then don't. In that moment, I felt like someone punched the air out of my chest. I couldn't speak, but I knew in my head that this was the only way. There was no choice. And it was one of those motivational moments, you know, like if I did this, I would finally be able to do the one thing that I wanted to do, the one profession that I really wanted to invest my time in, and the one thing that I was passionate about, becoming a doctor. And I'd be able to do it faster than I thought before. The why. I had a killer mindset. The chances were next to nothing and the stakes were everything. I knew that I had to basically smash every exam, assignment, coursework, and achieve the highest grades possible amongst the 200 people that were all applying for the same 10 spaces. I had around 40 to 50 days left before my first mid-year exams and hundreds of hours of studying to go. And the way I studied during that time surprises me to this day. I immersed myself in the process. I aimed for 90 to 100% in everything that I was doing because getting those top grades was like the minimum to getting in. There was no choice. I knew I wanted to do this, and when you aim for something so high and remove the choice, surprisingly, everything simplifies. I rarely lacked motivation in those few months. I protected my time. I was laser focused on my goal. When you have such a vivid and important macro level goal in your head, it will act as the most powerful driver in every micro study session that you have. And of course, it goes without saying that yes, you can do pretty well in exams anyways, even if you aren't this intense and this goal oriented. But that's not my point. My point is that to get those top 1% grades, in fact, the only way to get those top 1% grades is to shoot for the stars, to aim as highly as possible. Because that mindset will change every decision, every micro action that you take henceforth. But now let's get into the meat of the video. This is what I practically did differently that year. The what? The system I created to predict exam questions. It would have been ridiculous to hope that me studying as much as possible would guarantee me top grades for all 5 of my modules. No, that risk was too high, so I had to be calculated. So I decided that my first step here would be to analyze, look for patterns, and crack each of those exams. I knew I could do this. I'd done it well before with A-level and IB subjects. So I scoured the internet, looked at all the resources and student websites, and at the end found 4 to 5 past papers for each of my modules. That was good enough. Now I needed to 1. Find general patterns. 2. Understand the types of questions that the examiner was assessing. And 3. The types of knowledge and topics that it was assessing. I basically wanted to find every hint and pattern that would give me an advantage when studying for my exams. This is where my question spreadsheet comes in. Once I had these past papers, I naturally created a spreadsheet because I love spreadsheets. And it was a simple sheet. It included all the specific topics that came up in each of the exams and how often they came up, the list of topics in one column, and the amount of questions about those specific topics in the other columns. And luckily, after analyzing the past papers, there were a lot of patterns. Yes, there were common topics that I knew I'd focus more on, but there were also common ways that these topics were assessed. For example, some knowledge was tested the same way year after year. For example, for some of the choose the wrong answer type multiple questions, they gave us the same 2 to 3 right options. Again, this is just one example, but after figuring out the patterns in the ways each topic is being assessed and the types of questions that are being given for it, I was able to heavily focus my understanding and memorizing of specific knowledge and specific details that were more likely to be tested. And I know that figuring out the patterns within the exams for each of the modules takes effort, it takes a bit of smarts and some preliminary understanding of the topics as well, but it paid off. Because for 4 out of 5 of those exams, I can honestly say that I predicted 90% of the questions that came up. Or at least I'd seen some variation of those before and I knew the best way to answer them. And even if the exact type of question, the exact type of pattern you found in the way the topic is assessed doesn't come up in your exam, you'll still have such a huge advantage compared to everyone else. Everyone else is studying for those topics, whereas you are preparing to answer questions on that specific exam. After reading so many questions, spending time analyzing them, when you look at a question on the exam now, you will immediately know what that question is assessing. Not just the topic, but the type of knowledge it's assessing as well. So many of the new questions that you will being assessed on are being assessed again in a very similar way to how they've been assessed in the past. Therefore, my main piece of advice is to try your best to find as many past papers as possible. Actively try and look for patterns and understand the types of questions and the way each topic is being assessed to the best of your ability. And just be smart, because most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, examiners can be lazy. They examine the same thing year after year in different ways, or sometimes even the same way. But don't be mistaken, just analyzing some past papers isn't an easy shortcut. You still have to be going through the information using an effective study method. The how. Have an effective studying method. For my situation, I had around 100 plus pretty heavy, dense lectures to go through, and I knew that just going through them one by one for spending a couple hours on each la-di-da wouldn't get me anywhere. So the first thing I did is skim through a good batch of 5 to 6 lectures that all related to the same general big topic. I went through them all very generally in around an hour. I read through each of the PowerPoint's learning objectives. I skim read all of them to get a good general idea of, okay, what's important here? Which PowerPoints do I need to spend more time on? Which learning objectives do I need probably more resources like textbooks and stuff for? And essentially, without even knowing what layering or priming was at the time, this step would do exactly that. It would help me understand that first basic layer of information and help me not get stuck on the details as I go through it. Me skim reading and going through the general ideas of 5 to 6 big info-dense lectures really helped me eventually get through all of these lectures much faster. The next step, number 2, was going through all of the PowerPoints now after getting that first basic layer and converting all the important pieces of information into recall questions that I could then use to test myself on later. This was the first year that I properly did this active recall method thing 100% for all my modules. I can dive into the specifics and go on and on about the humongous benefits of testing myself and doing this method, but I've made like 8 videos on this already, so check any of them out. Then step number 3, at the start of every revision session that I would have about that topic, I would begin it by testing myself on those questions to the best of my ability, which by the way was around 20 to 25 questions per PowerPoint. I wouldn't use any answers, no resources, nothing. I'd spend 4 minutes trying to rack my brain and pull knowledge out about whatever I remember to do with a few of those questions. And once I'd given a few of them a good go, I'd then go to the PowerPoints and the textbooks that I made them from to cross-check. And that's step 4, going back to the PowerPoints and the textbooks and trying my best to fill in my knowledge gaps and understand exactly what I didn't remember and where I went wrong in my line of reasoning. If I repeatedly was failing to understand something, I'd go back to the textbook and try and re-relate the knowledge to my pre-existing knowledge, see what link was not there. I didn't do this at the time. At the time, I would just go and watch videos, maybe speak to my friends about what I didn't understand. What I did do is I taught people my weakest topics. But I do remember that my weak topics took me a long time to understand. And I do wish that I knew more about efficient ways to connect dots of information in your head and to efficiently understand things, but that is how it was at the time. I didn't know much. Anyways, my point is that the study method I used was good, but it was not perfect. But because I was devoting 100% of my effort and time into getting those top 1% grades, having the perfect method didn't really matter. So don't obsess over yours, just incorporate some form of testing and layering and you'll be fine. The when. I focused on when I work best. I am not a morning person. I've never functioned best in the early waking hours, and I knew if I woke up every day at 6 a.m. and tried to push that routine through, it'd never end up being sustainable. In fact, I remember trying to set this super strict routine for myself initially, but it would just end up pissing me off so much when I went slightly off track or woke up a few hours later. My mood for the rest of the day would be ruined and it would affect my studying in such a negative way, because I'm waking up at 9 or 10 instead of 6? Having an early morning idealistic perfect routine is not required in the recipe of getting top % grades. It was just adding stupid amounts of pressure on myself. So this is what my full routine ended up as. I'd wake up 9 or 10, I'd have a good breakfast with some YouTube, and I'd figure out exactly what I needed to get done today. The exact PowerPoints I want to cover, the specific assignments I want to do, and then I'd be in the library by 11. I'd do focused work from 11 to 2ish, then I'd go get lunch for an hour, chill with my boys, come back to the library at 3, and again, focused work from 3 to 6. Then I'd do gym, go get dinner, do something fun, and come back at 9 and finish off with one last focus session from 9 to 11. Now, come here, have a closer look. I was doing 8 to 10 hours of focused work almost every day, and that is way more than enough if you're studying effectively. But also notice that I slept until 9 a.m. I had 5 full hours of chill time in the day. And yes, a lot of my work days did revolve around this work and studying, but it only ramped up to this a few weeks before the exams. My point is that you don't need to have a monotonous, boring, only studying 12 hours a day type life, even if you are aiming for those top 1% grades. All in all, even though achieving those grades and then getting through the entire entire interview stage, and getting into medicine midway through my degree like this was a really big achievement for me. I was not special. I just had a no BS mindset, a unique way to understand what types of questions could be assessed on the exam. I had a good enough studying method, and with the grace of God, I also had some good luck. But the one thing that I honestly wish I knew earlier on in life is how to focus for long hours and get into that flow state easily and regularly with all of the work that I have. And if you want to save yourself hours of procrastinating and getting sidetracked with your work, then check this video out. It is my full focus guide that I spent such a long time researching and reading up on that after implementing it myself, it took my own focus to the next level as well. So I really suggest that you go have a look at it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, it helps with the algorithm. Spam the comments, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the next one.